So, a couple days ago, I had the most bizarre thought after meeting someone. And I thought to myself, what if a shark followed an alligator, watched that alligator go to land, and then it spent the rest of its life trying to figure how to get to land? And because it couldn't figure that out, it started to feel as if it's a failure. And that occurred to me because the shark has the entire ocean that it could explore. By contrast, the alligator can't do the same. However, it is so fixated on that thing, the achievement of that goal, that is seemingly so much better than where it is, it loses sight of what it actually has. For years, I didn't understand why the traditional titles, the amazing corporate job that I had, all of those things, the degrees and the credentials, and all of the things that I did, frankly, just ceased to impress me. It ceased to inspire me. And I just felt like with every day, I was losing some of my light. I was doing this job and this work that everyone else was impressed by except me. And I didn't know what to do to come out of it. And it was only because a friend of mine who was in the alcohol business, she asked me to help her with some tastings. And I realized that I actually liked the feeling of teaching people about brands. So it wasn't even about the alcohol, it was teaching. I love to connect with people, I like to teach. And the feeling that I got before, during, and after every tasting that I conducted, I'm like, you know what? I think I want a life in this space. The problem is that no distributor would hire me because my resume read like a scientist and as a consultant, which would be correct because that is what I was. And that was when I discovered the power of writing, and I wrote my first book, Discovering the New York Craft Spirits Boom, where I interviewed 30 distillers from Brooklyn to the Finger Lakes. I had at this point already left the company. I had no marketing budget, being just completely transparent. But I knew that I had a story that I thought would be interesting. I was not aware of this story, and especially because I had been at that point doing tastings for like 9 years while being an environmental consultant. I knew so much about these mega brands, but nothing about craft distillers. And niching, finding that space, finding that thing that you're interested in, that thing that you know about that not necessarily everyone knows about. That was my first introduction into the value of that. And so while I did this, I started this business. My clients who were in this book were my first clients. Then I ended up expanding into international and other domestic brands. And that's when I wrote this book, Discovering the New York Craft Spirits Boom, Things to Consider When Entering the Booze Business. And the reason that I wrote this book is because I discovered the one thing that most entrepreneurs know, and that is that the only thing worse than having no client is having a bad one. I was so angry when I wrote this book. I actually accomplished it all in a weekend. The client, I met them back in October. And in January, when I was ready to onboard them, I discovered that they did absolutely everything I told them not to do. I then realized that if I took the time to write this, it allowed me, or at least my right fit client, to identify me and to use this as a very low barrier entry point. If you're interested in working with me, this is a book. This is what I essentially live by. This is how I think. So we have an understanding before any large sums, any sums at all, really are exchanged. And I saw that the power of writing really is a tool that we can genuinely use to create the credentials that we may not traditionally have that will hold us back. Because we all have knowledge that that we possess and that we are able to transfer. Knowledge is transferable. The problem is that we often don't value the knowledge that we have enough, thus leaving us very, very stuck. And so the thing about when you're doing all of these shifts is that it's like a muscle that you begin to really strengthen and you begin to rely on. And when COVID came along, it killed this business for me. And I say it like that because being completely transparent, I feel like it did me a favor. I had gotten to the point where I didn't enjoy doing this work anymore. I realized that in order for me to serve my clients in a really meaningful way, I needed to have met them months, if not years before. And it was all very challenging. And I started to feel stuck again because I couldn't create the change that was meaningful. And I knew that I had so much more to offer. And then I just felt stuck. And so COVID comes along and I am feeling so lost. I become a content creator. And in as much as I loved content creating, I was feeling like there was just something that was missing. I have all this knowledge, all this information, and I'm like, you know what? Let me write this book. And this is called Pivot because life doesn't always go as planned. And in here, I pretty much just shared everything, all of the things that I had been doing over the course of my life, my immigration story, my education story, working and going through all these different industries. And the feedback that I received from this book is really what brought me to this place now, where I began to understand how stuck a lot of people just remain. They don't understand how to transfer the knowledge that they have because unfortunately, many times we think in a very linear manner. We think that where we start is supposed to be where we end. And if we decide to diverge from that, there's some kind of failure that has occurred, which is nothing further from the truth. And you just become very conditioned because you spent your entire life supporting the dreams of other people and you've put your own on the back burner, and it is just sitting there like this itch that you just can't reach and you just can't scratch, and it is bothering you, and no amount of shifting or twisting is helping you to alleviate that pressure that you're feeling, but still it is not enough to help to propel you forward. And so with that, I wrote Create Your Own Table, A Guide to Discovering Your Purpose. And I wrote this book very much like a blueprint, like a roadmap, to be able to, as I shared all of the information that I had in Pivot, but this is how I did what I did. Because I did realize that there was a structure, there was a thought process, there were formulas, and it was now my goal, my desire, my purpose to be able to share that with you. This is what you need to do in order to be able to take the next step. But as it is with me, as you probably would have realized by now, I then began to realize that, okay, if I have just helped you solve one problem, there's another one that you need to solve. Now now that you have the clarity, now you need to understand how to take that clarity that you now have and channel it into a business, into a side hustle, into a whatever it is that you want that would feed your soul. And with that, I created the Empowerment Blueprint Program. And so the Empowerment Blueprint Program, I actually created that program interviewing 50 different individuals, understanding what their pain points were, their pressures were, the challenges that they were having. And the biggest issue that everyone seemed to have was time. And so with that, I decided to make it a self-paced program It's every single module, so they're 24 in all. You can do it over 6 weeks or 6 hours, depending on your rate of consumption. You also get live training with me, so you're not just off in the wilderness on your own. I am there to help you just grind through, peel through, figure out all the different things, all the T's that need to be crossed and the I's that need to be dotted. And I created it in such a way that you can consume it on your own in your own time. But again, now that we've gotten here, if you would like to be where I am and essentially do what it is that I did, which is the feedback that I started to get, because now there's clarity in, all right, this is that knowledge, this is that experience that I'd like to leverage. How can I now write my own book so I can build those credentials and that credibility for myself? How can I then, from writing that book, create a program so I can now serve those individuals, especially depending on where you are in your life. You may just decide that this is something that you want to do in a very passive, easy way, or on a larger scale. It is completely up to you. But with that realization, I then began to realize I need to really just create an entire ecosystem. And so with that, I created the Create Your Own Table ecosystem that has essentially 3 levels. And so every level is meant to support you in the other one. Okay, so your first level is Clarity, which is the Empowerment Blueprint program. And that program, again, is ideal if you are just simply ready to stop feeling stuck. Your second level is your Build level. And so with that, that is your Book to Business Fast Track. And here you would go over so now that you've gotten clarity from completing the Blueprint program, now you're going to be focusing on turning that clarity into a book plus an offer plus a plan. So you'll have a book concept and an outline, your signature offer and what your pricing needs to be, and what your launch roadmap looks like. And last but not least, but certainly for that individual that may need a little bit more support, may need a little bit more hand holding, I created the Legacy level. And the Legacy level is a 12-month program. If you are just completely uncertain what that next step is, I am here to guide you quite literally every single step of the way. So we gain clarity in what that vision is, what that book is, what that story is, because at the end of the day, what all of this is about is leveraging lived experience. That is frankly the alpha and the omega. I often say, forgive me if I sound like I'm repeating myself, but that is what happens when you're sharing lived experience. But let's value the knowledge that we have. We all have knowledge and information that other people can benefit from. The problem is that we don't value our own knowledge. We often don't value our history. And especially if it's painful, we rather suppress it and share it. And so realizing that the Legacy program is here, I am here to support you on a 12-month basis to the completion of your book and a publishing strategy, to your program creation and a funnel building, and then your brand, your platform, and then what your growth roadmap looks like. So I hope, as always, that what I have shared serves. If you have any questions at all, please never hesitate to ask, and be sure to click on the link below where all of the details are available. I hope to hear from you soon. Have a fantastic day. Be well and just go forward and live your best life. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful day. Thanks again. Bye-bye.